Massachusetts, and I worked in Minnesota, and now I'm at the University of Mississippi.
You've been in the field of education since leaving graduate school?
Well, essentially, I'm a social scientist and public policy analyst, and what that means is that you can move from higher education back to healthcare administration, and I keep doing that based on what is available at the time. My expertise is in the area of higher education and public policy, and I like the field, and it creates tremendous opportunity for you as an individual to get some self-actualization in terms of bringing either health to communities or higher education, which are two essential aspects of development in whatever country you are.
All right, so we get a pretty good snapshot of Donald Peters and his work in the United States over the last 18 years. And I guess, in a sense, that's why a lot of people wonder, why is Donald Peters now considering political involvement in Dominica?
That's an interesting question. I think as you work within in the Western world, you contribute whatever community you work in, and you always feel almost abstract. You work in such a wide community, and you touch the lives of so many people, and there's a very difficult to see the results of your work. I'm also a professor of political science, and you teach students, you may never see them again. You never knew whether they succeed or not. You got to have a brilliant idea for funding healthcare project, and then you never see whether this patients ever got the healthcare, because you move on as a consultant. And I felt that towards, after I had reached a certain level in the United States, I should probably contribute all of my skills back to the Caribbean. Essentially, I wanted to work for a regional organization because I felt I was thinking more in terms of the Caribbean rather than the singular island of Dominica. But I felt Dominica had done well in the last 14 years, and I think it was on the brink of breaking out into being one of the more progressive countries in the Eastern Caribbean. As you may know, I am probably the expert on Eastern Caribbean politics inside, and the only one who's written a book on the Eastern Caribbean politics in itself. So I'm very familiar with the system, and the fact that Prime Minister Charles was stepping down, and I had an opportunity to run for her position in her seat there was an honor, and I felt maybe I should do it. And I discussed it with the Freedom Party, and I was nominated through their council to contest for that seat.
These Donald Peters at the 1990s, people understand decisions in terms of some hard, cold realities. Donald Peters has done well for himself in the United States. If I hazard a conservative guess, I would think you must be earning in excess of $100,000 a year. Why would Donald Peters want to leave that to come into politics, the reward of which is a $5,000 salary as a minister at the end of the day?
Maybe I'm crazy. But you're correct. I mean, my salary is public information in the state of Mississippi. I'm one of the highest paid officials in the University of Mississippi, so your guess that I make over 6 figures is accurate, and that comes with a car and plus stock options in the stock market. So true, I'm a lot better off than I would be financially if I were to take a position in Dominica. But I think at some time you're driven by a goal, and I think the goal for me is to lead. And I think this offers up an opportunity to take leadership at some point in time in moving Dominica in the direction I think it should be moving. And I'm not afraid to start somewhere. I mean, I would prefer start at the top, but I'm always willing to take the grinds and the breaks and move my way to where I want to be.
Okay, so, I mean, medium to long term, Donald Peters sees himself as Prime Minister of Dominica.
Yeah, essentially that would be my goal.
Okay, so part of your strategic plan at the moment has Prime Minister written somewhere down in it?
Well, I think if you join any party and you feel that you have leadership skills, you should always try to contribute it towards the ultimate objective of what you feel, make your skills come to its logical conclusion. And I think in my case, I believe given the structure of government in Dominica, I'd be valuable at that position in the long run.
All right. Does this have anything to do with the furtherance of your career as a political scientist? I mean, in the event that this doesn't work, let's say you don't win the election, let's say what you're hoping to achieve is not achieved, but does that still chalk up as a plus, so to speak, on your CV as a political scientist? The fact that you have,
well, you know,
jumped into the fray in a Caribbean island, you know.
In the United States, we exist in a very competitive market at all levels in every profession. Most people in the United States that have moved very quickly in my profession, and I think if you were to culminate any activity as a political scientist, it would be to take leadership in international medium. That would guarantee that later on, when you go back to, say, a major university, you'd be an emeritus professor and command the same respect and big bucks that is possible. So by the time I was 55 or 60, I could be teaching comfortably as an emeritus professor with full tenure. So there is an aspect of it. That is a consideration. But two things I have to point out to you. I never lose an election, so if I chose to run, I couldn't lose. And if I do choose to run, then I would have to deal with the economic aspect. My goal was to get ready to publish my second book, and I would be able to live on the royalties, because as you rightly point out, you cannot make an adjustment from 6 figures in the United States to how much you say, 5,000?
It's not 6 figures, trust me. Okay, it's $5,000 a month. Maybe get some gratuity at the end of 5 years, but that's about it. But $5,000 a month is $60,000 a year, and if I divide it for you into EC, we're going to come down into US dollars. We're going to come down to about 22,000 US dollars.
I'll probably start taking collections on Saturday.
Exactly.
But that is, I don't want to sound altruistic by no means, and I'm really grappling with the whole decision-making process, given those same factors that you pointed out.
All right, well, what do you know? The phone lines are open and the calls keep coming. Lubia, good evening.
Well, what I'm saying is I can hear you very, very clear, but you can hardly hear this Peter guy. Can you do anything about his voice?
Oh, you're not hearing him well?
No, not clear. So from starting.
Okay. I thank you very much for that. Apparently, well, I hope our producer took note of that because the complaint there is that you're not being heard very well. So your mic is okay. All right, we'll test it. We'll see what maybe they can do something to boost your level up in the studio. All right. Back to our discussion. You were talking a while ago about decision. The decision is not made yet?
Well, yes, I accepted the nomination of the Freedom Party to run for the elections, but you have to understand that process. After you've made the decision that you will accept the nomination, there's a whole process of meeting with the party itself and looking at what the whole process of election includes, and that is currently being done.
When you say the process of election,
the time factor is crucial for me. The party has to indicate to me how much time I need to dedicate to the elections. One of the concerns people have is that I have not been around for a while, and therefore I need to be visible in the communities, which I think is a legitimate concern, and therefore I have to consider those aspects of whether I can give the time that I have been instructed to give in the community.
All right, more phone calls. Walton Waven, good evening.
Yes, I would like to know what is Mr. Donald's nationality, please.
What's his nationality? Aren't you Dominica?
I was born in Great Marlborough Street in Dominica.
He was born on Great Marlborough Street, Roseau, Dominica. Okay, thank you, caller. I was a little bit confused a while ago because that's the information I had. All right, so you need to know what amount of time you're going to have to hit the road and run with the ball.
Yep.
And if you're not satisfied that you have enough time, you might not be able to accept the nomination.
Well, I think, and anytime you introduce yourself into a political arena, there are certain sacrifices you have to make, but I think more importantly, the people of the country will decide what it is they want from you. And I want to be very, very attentive to that. And some of the concerns I would like to meet, and if I think that I cannot give the 100% that I need to give to the constituency and to the nation, I would probably have to talk to my superiors in the Freedom Party on that.
Get the sense that you're hedging, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. Let's go to Stock Farm. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I would like to ask Dr. Donald Peters if he intends to pursue his profession once he wins the Rosa Central seat.
His profession?
Yeah.
Which is what? What?
Does you mean if I want to continue working?
Okay. Do you think? Do you mean whether he's going to continue working?
Yeah, as Vice Chancellor.
Okay. All right. How are you going to? Tell us about that. You're going to resign the Vice Chancellor?
Well, if I were to win the elections and I was asked to serve as in any capacity in the executive of the government, I would have to resign my position as Vice Chancellor.
But that's if you lose.
If I won.
No.
Oh, I don't lose.
Oh yeah. Okay. If you won.
Yes.
But during the time that you're actually campaigning, that's not necessary.
No.
Once the decision is made, the people have decided what they want to do.
That means I have another job. I can't hold two jobs. And I would like to, if I were to serve on the government, I would want to give that 100%.
Okay. All right. People question, why is Donald Peters picking the Freedom Party just at the time that the party seems to be running out of gas?
Yeah, I've heard that question asked, and as a political scientist now, I'll put my other hat. I have a lot of information that I probably can give as a professional to the field. I think the Freedom Party still remains the party to beat. They have taken Dominica from the devastation of a hurricane and brought it up to being one of the leading economic and social programs in the Eastern Caribbean. I know people think that St. Lucia is probably more advanced than Dominica, but when we look at the numbers, we are way up there. The Freedom Party has dynamic leadership. They have one of the most recognized leaders in the entire world, in third world that is.
Who's leaving?
The Prime Minister.
Who is leaving? She's leaving.
Yes, who is leaving?
Yeah. That creates a major void and some difficulties in transition.
Well, one of the things about parties, I hope, is that parties operate around fundamental philosophies, and I would assume that some of her philosophies would be maintained. For instance, a philosophy on tourism, a philosophy in health, or a philosophy on development, which are things that we in North America are very supportive of. The notion, the whole concept of takeover by the multinational corporations of Dominica is something she has resisted, and I support that. So these are some of the things that I'm interested in, why I have been attracted to the Freedom Party, and why I would run for them.
All right, there's a few other bases we need to cover there, but we need to take some phone calls because they're coming very quickly indeed. Goodwill, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm just calling to ask, why don't you exchange seats with Mr. Peter? Because when you speak, you're very clear, and when he talks, hardly anyone can hear him.
Okay, I'm going to ask to take a break here, so we're going to try to sort out, that must be a technical difficulty.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break for word from our sponsors. We're going to come back in just a moment.
Okay.
My pensive of the nation, being informed, educated, and entertained. My pensive and your television right here all day. Here's only cable TV network, bring the world into your home. With Moppin' TV, you're at home. Moppin' TV.
I'm Bella Shaw of CNN. CNN CNN brings you the hottest news topping today's headlines on Marpin Television. Check in with Marpin and CNN, Global Television News, for the latest breaking stories from around the world.
Who, me? AIDS? No way. You can't get AIDS from just having sex once in a while, right?
Wrong. You can get AIDS from just one unprotected sexual encounter.
Kimon, moi, ma kwa moi sa tape AIDS. If I tell my AIDS a poor femme tape AIDS yourself. Ah, wa.
Wrong. If exposed to the virus, it is easier for a woman to get AIDS than a man. So use a condom or have one safe partner. AIDS can be prevented. Get the facts and act on them. An AIDS-free you depends on you.
Welcome back to What About You Live at Marpin Television Studios. Good morning, Daniel. Our guest is Dr. Donald Peters. Callers pointed out a while ago that we were having difficulty hearing him. I hope that that difficulty has been cleared up. What we tried to do here in the break was to sort out what seemed to be a technical difficulty. We hope that's sorted out. If it's not, please call and let us know what the situation is, because it seems to be all fine from this side. All right, Dr. Peters, back to our discussion. So you have put on your political, the hat of the political analyst, looked at the situation, decided, well, the Freedom Party was your best chance coming in.
Yeah. I felt I could win the elections no matter who I ran for, but I wanted to run with the party who I felt had a better chance of winning the elections. And
Okay.
from my figures, it looks like the Freedom Party is the one that will win the elections.
And you're saying that notwithstanding the fact that the party has lost ground over the last two elections. So, for example, from a situation of 15 seats in 1985 down to 11, slender one-seat majority. Although it's a little bit misleading, that one-seat majority, in the sense that you have an opposition that's divided in 6-4. So it's effectively it's 11-6-4 as opposed to 11-10. All right. So when you look at the situation right now, the Freedom Party is in transition in terms of its leadership. Prime Minister Eugenia Charles has announced that she's not going to run anymore, and the party has appointed or selected a successor. Let's talk about that, because there is a concern nationwide about how the party itself is managing that transition, especially since it seems that the heir apparent is not in the best books of the leader herself, the outgoing leader.
Okay.
What sort of difficulty do you see that posing for the party's chances?
A political party is a very complex organization, and anytime you have people together in an organization, there's different opinions and different concepts and philosophies that dominate the dynamics of the organization. And obviously in that party there are groups that have real concerns on different issues. In terms of the party leadership, therefore, the party has elected an individual to lead the party, and with majority support from the party. There are people, of course, who always feel that somebody else should have or could have led the party, but my impression of the Freedom Party is that they understand clearly what must happen to win, and I think they're committed to do that. I believe that there are some philosophical differences among some of the leadership, but I'm sure, based on what my conversations with them, that is just a phase that the organization is going through, and that will all rectify itself in shortly.
All right, given time, it will rectify itself.
Yes, I think the dynamics of personalities in an organization that have been run entirely, whose leadership has been in place for over a decade and a half, is not an easy transition. And those issues and problems that they're currently experiencing are symptomatic of a normal transition. And so I'm not too disturbed by this.
But are those difficulties going to leave scars that are hard to heal, you think?
Well, in the first place, the Prime Minister is standing down, so she would not be there. In the second place, the other factions, or if there are factions or people with different philosophies, will understand clearly that the party needs to unify its objectives and galvanize itself behind the elected leader and go with it. Parties are evolving, and in the next 5 years they may choose to change the leader, but at this point, the leader has been selected it's a democratic system. The leader was appointed, and he has the support of all of the members of the party.
All right, Point Michelle for Dr. Donald Peters. Good evening.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. I want to say that you can see the Freedom Party has been founded on principle, where from the beginning you find there are so many professional people who left their high income and go down to their very low salaries and rule the country from where it was to where it is today. And we having Dr. Peter coming in to join the hard-working group. So I would say welcome to Dr. Peter, and I feel his votes will be overwhelmed in his constituency, and you can see that the Freedom Party has been a very, very strong party, and we are full of dedicated men, and we are not really accepting anybody, but you have to have the mark of hard working. You have to have a hard working mark.
Okay, caller, your point is well made. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Straight vote of confidence there for the candidacy of Dr. Donald Peters.
Thank you.
But of course, the caller is calling all the way from Point Michelle. Probably would like to have something like that from Roseau Central.
Yeah, right. I guess we can get him transplanted to Central.
All right. How much are you up to speed on some of the recent developments in Dominica?
Well,
You've been reading the papers?
Yes, I stay on top of issues. I probably have more information on Dominica than most Dominicans. That's part of my job. I'm a professor of political science. I teach a course in Latin America and the Caribbean, and so I keep up to date on the issues that manifests itself here. I know currently the major national issue is the Haitian issue, on whether we should accept them, and whether, if we accept them, we should put them in camps, or whether should we let them.
I think the broad understanding is that we should accept them.
Yes, and I think that was a very good decision on the part of the nation.
All right, let's go back to some phone calls. Castle Comfort, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Peters, looking at you, like when you left here some time ago, you know you were involved with the progressive movement, what we call in our time, maybe we were not too smart, leftist movement. We are a Christian country. What part does Christ play in your life right now? Thank you.
Well, I am a Christian, as you probably well know. I'm by no means a heathen, and I support the role of the church in the community, and respect the role of religion in the life of the people. As a political leader, that's about all I can do, is to ensure that people have the right to worship their particular religion in a country, and I would defend that right for them.
A couple of weeks ago, there was an article appearing in one of the local newspapers. I think it was the Tropical Star, basically courting the candidacy of Charles Savard for the Roseau Central constituency. The people who authored the letter claimed to be fully in support of Mr. Savard for that position, and suggested to him, with full knowledge that he is a leading member of the Freedom Party who contested the leadership a year ago, that he should run as an independent because they feel he has been slighted by the party in choosing you to run. How do you read that?
Well, I'm not privy to the process of the candidate selection process. I was not here. I understand it's a well-structured process in which a council selects the candidate, and that is based on a number of factors and variables which they have access to. Mr. Savard is definitely a significant and important member of the organization of the Freedom Party, and whether he was nominated as a candidate, I'm not sure, but if I were to step down, I'm sure that Mr. Savard would be one of those considered, and that process, I understand, would be the same as it was before, in that a council will decide. As to him running as an independent, I'm sure Mr. Sabra is well aware of the history of independence in the whole Caribbean political arena, and I'm not sure he would want to venture that, but as an individual, I'm sure he has that option.
Our guest is Dr. Donald Peters. The caller is from Roseau. Hello.
Hello. I would just like to ask Dr. Donald Peters what would eventually happen if Dominica Freedom Party was to lose the election and he was to win the seat. Would he remain in Dominica or would he go back to university?
Okay, thank you, caller. The Freedom Party loses the election. Do you hang around? Do you go back to your VC position, student affairs at University of Mississippi?
Well, I'm optimistic that they would win, but if the scenario that you present occurred, I would have to go back to work, and because I would have no job, and come to meetings when the parliament meet, which I think is once a month or whenever parliament meets.
Yeah. But I'm puzzled. If you would have to go back because you had no work.
Yeah.
I mean, for somebody earning in excess of $100,000 US in America who comes down to take a minister's salary at $5,000 or $2,000 US a month, for 24,000 VC dollars, 24,000 US dollars a year. So you're taking a pay cut, probably a pay cut in excess of 100,000 US dollars to come to Dominica. And then if the party loses, you want to go back to work?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what about doing something down here?
Well, you know our political system. My contribution would be negligible in a system like this. Opposition has almost no input into decision making. The Constitution is clear on who runs the country.
Would you like to change that?
Yes, I've always advocated a change in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. To accomplish what exactly?
Well, first of all, I would change the whole central government system. They would have local governments, cities and towns would run themselves, and the national government would only be responsible for federal funding and defense and those kind of issues. I think communities are better equipped to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be adding some excess levels of bureaucracy for?
Oh, no. I think communities would run their own community. I mean, Marigot would have its own hospital, its own schools, its own bridges. People pay taxes to the government of Marigot, and there would be central taxes which would cover major expenditure like infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So my direction would not be consistent with the current British system, but the chances of changing the constitution of the Eastern Caribbean states seem extremely remote at this point, given the process for it. I have no objections working with the Constitution as it is.
Let's backtrack a bit. Your relationship with the Freedom Party. How did this nomination take place? You expressed an interest in working with the party. You have been a card-bearer member of the party for a number of years, or you expressed an interest in working, contesting the election, and then somebody nominated you and the council agreed. How did it really work?
Well, a lot of Freedom Party people had approached me and asked me whether I would be interested in running, or because I had always indicated that I would be ready to come back to Dominica. And when I found out that the Prime Minister was not going to run, I indicated my interest to the party itself.
When was that?
Last fall.
Okay.
About the same time last year.
Oh, okay.
Probably earlier.
And then you were nominated, then you were accepted.
Yes.
Okay. I have a few more questions to ask you on that, but I don't want to keep the caller waiting any longer. It's from St. Joseph. Hello.
Yes, Lennox. Two things to Dr. Peters. One, there is a very wonderful book by William Revere at the Roseau Public Library on pre- and post-independent states. I think I heard you mention that you probably had written the own book on something to do with politics in the Eastern Caribbean. So probably it's something that you're aware of, or something probably you would look at. And secondly, you mentioned a philosophy of tourism and a philosophy of development. Could you tell me a little about the philosophy of development of this present government that drew you to it? Thank you.
Bill Revere's book, you're familiar with it?
Yes, I'm familiar with the literature, and I have read it, and it's my book is a textbook, and it's different, but that's not an issue. It's a very good piece of literature.
Yeah.
People should read it. In terms of Dominica's fundamental philosophy towards tourism, it's I think the Freedom Party and Prime Minister Charles have recognized tourism for what it